Hello friends. Today I will be taking up another aspect of development. That is, we will go into developmental challenges. So far we have discussed about normal development and how to assess development. Why? This is important so that we can identify and manage the different developmental disorders or challenges. Now let us first look at the factors that may go wrong. What can happen that will make us think that development is not going in the right direction? Well, there may be delay in acquiring motor skills like sitting, standing, walking. The tone of the baby may be abnormal. The baby may be spastic or may be very floppy. Then there may be delay in cognitive skills and adaptive skills, that is, the intelligence development may be delayed. There may be regression of milestones, and some babies may just present with a dysmorphic features or maybe a very large head. As a physician, you have to think, is something also going wrong in the development? There may be delayed speech, delay in vision and hearing. Also, there may be a lack of appropriate interest. What I mean by this is every individual has different sort of interest for a particular object. Say a 6-month-old baby, if you give that baby a small ball, the baby will try to hold the ball. That's it. The same ball given to a 1 or 1.5 year old baby, what will he do? He will try to play with it. He will try to kick it. And a 3-year-old will definitely bring a bat and try to play bat ball with that ball. So the interest created by an object differs according to age. If this interest in various objects and people is not age appropriate, that is an indication that the development may be delayed. Then the child may not be interacting properly with people and with toys. There may be behavioral problems, and finally, when the child goes to school, there may be learning problems as well. All of these are indicators that something is going wrong. Now, before we take up the individual conditions, let us see what are the risk factors for developmental challenges. We would expect every child to develop normally into a normal individual. But what are the factors? They can be categorized into three major groups. One is biological factors, that is something affecting the body, maybe through maternal factors or perinatal factors, as the baby is being born. How do these biological factors act? They cause brain damage. Hence, poor development, poor neurodevelopment. Then there may be genetic factors. That is, the child is born with a genetic disorder. We will see what different types of genetic disorders may be. Various diseases may have a genetic predisposition as well. And on top of this, there may be environmental factors. Certain issues in the environment may not allow the child to reach his developmental potential. Beyond this, there remains a good number of children with developmental delay where the cause cannot be defined. Now, let us take a closer look at these three characters. Biological, maternal. What are the common maternal factors? Maternal nutrition, maternal illness like hypertension or placental abnormalities, APH, history of drug intake, history of addiction to tobacco or alcohol. All of these may give rise to poor brain development in utero. When coming to intranatal and postnatal, that is taken together, perinatal factors. A lot of perinatal factors can lead to brain damage. The most important are birth asphyxia and prematurity, also low birth weight to some extent. So, considering these biological factors, now we know that there are quite a few factors which can lead to brain damage in a newborn. So, which are the new infants who are at risk of poor brain development due to brain damage? Who are they? VLBW babies, very low birth weight babies, that is less than 1800 grams. birth asphyxia, particularly HIE grade 2 and above. Infection, severe infection in the form of sepsis, meningitis, NEC in the neonatal period, persistent seizures, symptomatic hypoglycemia, that is hypoglycemia with seizures, children on ventilation, respiratory distress with requiring ventilation, and severe hyperbilirubinemia, particularly those who require exchange transfusion. So, and a STOMI medical course. So, all of these infants are at high risk and need to be followed up regularly in a neurodevelopment clinic, high risk follow up clinic. Okay. Coming down to the genetic factors. Genetic factors may be like simply chromosomal disorders. We know trisomies, deletions, microdeletions, conditions like Klinefelter, Turner's, they all can present with developmental delay. Then there are certain genetic syndromes like Fragile X, Rett syndrome, Angelman syndrome, Prader-Willi, and also some non-syndromic autosomal mutations which are now being identified in great numbers. So these are all variations in the copy number which comes out of de novo mutation in various areas in the genetic constitution, which can give rise to abnormal brain development structurally and functionally. Structural abnormality of the brain like lissencephaly also has a genetic predisposition. Then there are the metabolic disorders, which include in IEM, storage disorders, neurodegenerative disorders. All of these come under the genetic factors. And looking at the environmental factors, most important, poverty. Also a very important factor is maternal education. If the mother is not educated, she will not be able to educate her child properly. Inadequate environmental stimulation, less opportunity to learn will lead to inadequate neurodevelopment in a young child. Environmental pollution, particularly with lead. So, now having an idea about these factors, what are the patterns of developmental delay that we come across? In the next slide, I will be showing you a pictorial presentation of the different patterns. It may be a global delay, that is delay in various domains but in a proper sequence. All the domains are delayed almost to the same level. Say a 4-year-old child has a gross motor development, fine motor, personal social, everything of 2 years. Another one is a global delay with improper sequence. What I mean here is there is delay in more than 2 domains, but not all the development in the different domains are not at the same level. See, a 6-year-old child with cerebral palsy has some cognitive delay, some language delay, but still cannot sit on his own, is hardly able to turn over. So his um, gross motor development is at the level of 8 or 9 months, whereas his cognitive, personal, social, language has attained a level of 3 years. So delayed in all these different domains, but the sequence is not maintained. Then there may be isolated delays in one single domain, like isolated motor delay, isolated speech delay. And next comes regression. As I mentioned earlier, the child has attained some milestones and then he tends to forget. A child who has learned to walk suddenly stops walking, cannot stand, cannot even sit up. Similarly, in cognitive development, a child who was able to talk in full sentences and was playing with toys suddenly stops playing, stops talking. So this is regression. We find this in autism spectrum disorder and also neurodegenerative disorders. Finally, there is deviation in the developmental trajectory. Development is not only delayed, but the child is developing in a peculiar way, not at all going in the right line, which we commonly see in autism spectrum disorder. So this is a pictorial depiction. The green arrow depicts normal development. In the red one, what is happening? Everything is happening slowly, so it's delayed. Deviation is, it's not just slow, it's taking a totally different route. And regression is something that has gone back on itself, a U-turn. Okay, now how will we recognize? What are the red flag signs of developmental delay? In gross motor, Tone abnormality may be there in early months. Asymmetry in the child, dysmorphism, persistence of primitive reflexes and abnormal gait are pointers towards gross motor delay and, of course, delayed motor milestones. For fine motor, what are the things we look at? In a 1 year old baby, immature pincer grasp cannot grasp an object with two fingers. Be careful. Poor object manipulation, cannot play properly or manipulate with objects properly. The same child at 18 months will be eating with a lot of spillage. Everything is falling out of his hands. The child is very clumsy at 2 years. A 3 year old not being able to put on his pants or help open his shirt. And the 5 year old with difficulty in buttoning his clothes. These are pointers for fine motor delay. Speech delay, we want to identify early. So we are looking for red flag signs which are evident as early as possible. So a 12-month-old or a 1 year old child who is not babbling. What do we mean by babbling? Making sounds like la la blah blah, that sort of sound, not produced by 12 months. And no gestures by 12 months either. That is, the child is not even trying to communicate with body gestures. Normally, a 1 year old would point to an object, would ask for something, or would cry when the mother goes away. These are gestures to show what he wants. And another point is by 2 months or by 2 years, the child does not utter at least two words. Then, for hearing impairment, how do we suspect that the child is not hearing? Lack of response to sounds, delayed speech, and poor response to commands. Not because he doesn't understand, because he cannot hear. Visual impairment. Does not play with hands by 3 months. Does not follow an object at 3 months. Does not make an eye contact by 3 months. So these three things are generally evident by 3 months of age. If it is not there, think of visual impairment. Then, as the child grows up, he tends to drop things from his hand, he's clumsy in his activity, tends to stumble over anything in front of him, hits people, bangs into other people. These are indicators of a poor visual ability. Cognitive delay is something a little complicated. How do you understand that the child's intelligence is not up to the mark? The child may have difficulty following simple instructions. He may have difficulty in learning new skills, maybe motor, maybe language, whatever. Cognition affects learning in every sphere. The child may be slow in his daily activities. He may be forgetting. Today you tell him something, tomorrow he cannot remember. Poor expressive language and sometimes behavioral problems. So, with all this in mind, now let us try to see what are the common developmental challenges that we face. Because development affects all these domains, the different conditions or diseases are also varied. If we go by the most common ones, first of all, I would mention cerebral palsy and other movement disorders, where the major affection is motor. Then comes intellectual disability and global developmental delay. They do go together, but they're not exactly the same. We'll come to it later. But under this group come the cognitive delay problems, intellectual functioning problem. Then comes hearing and speech defects, visual impairment, and we must mention a condition which is separate in itself, that is autism spectrum disorder. Apart from this, there may be various behavioral problems, of which ADHD is a common one. And finally, we need to mention learning disabilities. They all come under the purview of developmental challenges. Now, today I will take up intellectual disability and global developmental delay in a big way and mention a little bit about autism. Cerebral palsy and autism will be discussed in details in the next coming lectures. Okay, so now we take up intellectual disability and global developmental delay. What we called previously as mental retardation is now, the term has been recoined as intellectual disability. Now, let's first take up a case that will make it easier to understand. A 4-year-old boy is brought to you. Then the parents complain that the child has poor speech, does not follow instructions properly, the child is not toilet trained. He cannot feed himself at 4 years. He enjoys being with mother, and he likes to play, but he plays like a 2 year old. And then you take a history, and you learn that the child had developed head holding at 9 months, and he learned to walk at 3 years, and his first words came at 3.5 years. So, what is the possible diagnosis? Yes, GDD, or Global Developmental Delay. So, what do we mean by global developmental delay? Why use the word global? Let us see. Now, we have to remember one thing: intellectual ability is essential for everything we do, right? So, in poor intellectual ability affects development in all the domains. Now, in a small child, if we see there are delays in two or more domains, we call that condition global developmental delay. This diagnosis generally pertains to children up to 5 years of age. Note here that we are using the term delay, not developmental challenge or developmental disability, because this is the age when the child is still developing in all the domains up to 3 years or 5 years. So what we note is that the child is developing at a slower rate. We cannot say that the child has not attained. For example, a 4-year-old child um, talks in single words, has a vocabulary of say 20 words. So the child can talk, but the child has not achieved the language of 4 years. So we cannot say that the child has uh, inability to talk, no. But what he has is a speech delay. So in a young child up to the age of 5 years, if we find there are delays in more than two domains, that condition is called global developmental delay. Now, what is intellectual disability then? These children with global developmental delay, as they grow older, the other domains where there was delay, say motor domain, say language domain, they may gradually improve, and the child may attain those developmental levels. Like if I go back to the case I mentioned, the 4-year-old child can walk, can run, so his motor skills are now okay, but history shows that his motor development was delayed. Similarly, at 4 years, his language is delayed, but eventually he will be able to talk. So that as that child grows older, some of the domains, the delay will be surpassed. But what remains is the cognitive deficit. Now, this cognitive delay remains as a deficit or disability. And that is when we will use the term intellectual disability. So, now if we come to the definition, what do we mean by intellectual disability? A sub-average intellectual functioning, but not just intellectual functioning, with deficits in adaptive behavior. So the intellectual deficit affects his social life because of the deficit in adaptive behavior as well. And this manifests up to the age of 18 years. This is known as intellectual disability. I repeat, sub-average intellectual functioning with deficits in adaptive behavior. This requires a little more explanation. I'll come to it later. Now let us try to compare global developmental delay with ID. That will make our conception clearer. So GDD is seen in children less than 5 years, or is a diagnosis made below 5 years, where there is significant delay in two or more domains. And the formal diagnosis of ID is not possible because IQ cannot be tested. In a 3-year-old, I cannot really test IQ. I can do a developmental assessment. So I cannot formally diagnose it as ID. Whereas in intellectual disability, it is diagnosed by IQ level and poor adaptation. Delays in motor and language may have been attained by the time I diagnose the child as intellectual disability. Or I should say rather, the delays may have been overcome. Now, again coming back to IT. What are the criteria? Following on the definition I have mentioned, there are certain definite criteria laid down for diagnosis of IT. If we do an IQ test below 70 is criteria number 1. Number 2, this IQ should be less than 2 standard deviation below the mean for that particular age. Number 3, there should be deficits in adaptive functioning in at least 2 areas. There are various areas of adaptive functioning. A person adapts himself to a social life. Uh, that is adaptive functioning. And so there are various aspects of this adaptation, at least 2 of them. Let me mention some of them for you, to make it easier for you to understand. Like communication with anybody, anywhere. Self-care, taking care of his body, taking care of himself throughout the day. Activities of daily living, home living, doing work at home, social and interpersonal skills, functional academic skills. Out of these, if there is a deficit in any 2, that is point number 3. And point number 4 is the onset must be before 18 years. All these criteria need to be fulfilled to diagnose a child or a person as intellectual disability. Now, this ID, intellectual disability, is graded according to IQ as mild, moderate, severe, and profound. 50 to 70 is mild, 35 to 50 moderate, 20 to 35 severe, and less than 20 is profound. The details of each type is here in this table. I would not go into the details. You can go through it later at your convenience, but you don't have to memorize it. Now, with this much idea about intellectual disability, when will you suspect intellectual disability or GTD? In newborn dysmorphic syndromes, microcephaly is a pointer. Early infancy, failure to interact with the environment, vision and hearing impairment, then gross motor delay, language delays, these are all pointers. Then gradually in preschool, there is language difficulty, difficulty in behavioral difficulty in learning things, delays in fine motor skills like cutting, coloring, drawing, pencil holding, and in school age, academic underachievement. These are all leading towards ID. Okay, now if we take up intellectual disability together, they can be well categorized into 2 groups, which is important for our approach to managing them. What do we mean by 2 groups? Mild ID, where the IQ is 50 or above, and severe ID, where the IQ is less than 50. Why is it important? What is the difference between mild and severe? Etiology wise, they differ. Epidemiology wise, also they differ. How? So, the mild intellectual disability cases are generally many more in number. For 4 children with mild ID, you will get 1 child with severe ID. But though the incidence is higher, the etiology is not clear in many of them, and most of them are due to some environmental causes. Hence, these are largely preventable. And overall, the prognosis is better. You can improve their condition. Whereas the severe ID, though less in number, are much more difficult cases. They generally have some pathological or organic problem. Prevention, though possible, is relatively much more difficult, and the prognosis is worse. So we will look at mild ID and severe ID separately. As I said, mild ID is associated with environmental factors I had already discussed earlier. So if you could improve that as well as the perinatal factors, then we will be able to prevent it to some extent. Now these cases are identifiable in 50% causes can be identified. Apart from the environmental causes, other causes may be some genetic syndromes, less. More importantly, the fetal deprivation, that is maternal malnutrition, prematurity, perinatal insults, as we had talked about. All of these may be leading to mild mental retardation. So, prevention would include improving the environment and preventing these perinatal factors, like preventing early infancy, consanguinity, better health and education of mothers, antenatal perinatal care, avoiding alcohol and drugs, better maternal and infant nutrition, perinatal and neonatal screening, and early intervention for cognitive development will help in bringing a lot of these babies out of the cradle. Coming to severe ID, we have already mentioned biological causes can be identified in more than 75% of these cases. And these causes, as I mentioned earlier, are the chromosomal ones, the endocrine, the metabolic ones. So, how can we prevent them? They're not that well preventable as the mind, but still, here, what we can do is good amount of screening, treating the IEM, treating hypothyroidism, preventing head injury, trauma, exposure to toxins, preventing and treating infection may prevent mental retardation to some extent. Okay, then a few words about autism. Again, let us look at a case. Here also, it's a 3-year-old boy. This boy is brought with a history of not talking and is making peculiar sounds. So he cannot talk, just like the other one, but he does make peculiar sounds. He does not respond when called, and he does not connect with the mother. The previous child was playing with the mother, though like a small baby, but he liked to be with the mother. This one does not. This child does not play properly with toys. He's always running around and showing repetitive activity, doing the same thing repeatedly, does not like being touched, and he's a picky eater. What do you think this case could be? Yes, this is a child with autism. So, what is autism? It is basically a neurodevelopmental disorder, and it is characterized by a typical behavioral phenotype. What do I mean by a behavioral phenotype? This child shows differences in certain behaviors. Certain behavioral patterns are seen in children with autism. They include inadequate language development, inadequate communication skills. Even without language, a child may be able to communicate, but these children have difficulty in communication. Social interaction and reciprocity, interacting with others, the given to and fro interaction of day to day life may be very, very deficient. Deficiencies in play and imagination, and poor sensory perception. So, all these impairments in some amount and present in some of the fields may be seen in children with autism. When do these children present? Some babies, nowadays we look into very early diagnosis of autism. Very early months of life, they may appear different. Their behavior may be different from other children. Crying too much, not really interacting with the mother, not looking at the mother. These are very subtle features which may be pointers to autism. Then delayed speech is reported during the later half of second life, and most of the children are brought in because of delayed speech. Then comes regression. The child may present with regression of milestones in the second year in 25 to 30% of cases. They may present at school age for poor peer interaction, hyperactivity, school failure, behavioral problems, and overall, nowadays children are being brought in early enough. Generally, by the age of 3 years, they're presenting to the doctor. And this is a picture showing the different sensory problems that children with autism may have. They are very sensitive to sounds, they may have difficulty in focusing, they may have poor fine motor abilities, they may like to chew or lick everything, they may want to smell things, they are interested in objects around the house, but they're not really playing with toys properly. They don't like to comb their hair, put on shoes, or they don't like to be touched. They may be picky eaters and a lot of other things. Altogether, how do we diagnose ASD? It is mostly a clinical diagnosis. I will not go into the details. A clinical diagnosis which requires very good history taking, clinical examination, screening and assessment, and rarely investigations. All I will mention here is the screening tool most commonly used is MCHAT. It's a very simple freely downloadable questionnaire with 23 questions. Anybody, anywhere can do it, but it is applicable to children 2.5 years of age, up to 2.5 years of age. For assessment, we use the DSM-5 criteria for autism, and there are tools like ESA, which is a novel Indian tool. There are SCARS, ADOS, just know the names, that is enough for the time being. What I want to emphasize here is when a child is suspected to have autism, it is basically a clinical diagnosis. Hearing assessment is required before we go into speech therapy and look at why the child is not talking. Apart from that, other investigations are mostly not required. So, EEG, MRI of the brain, metabolic screen, chromosomal study, all of these can be done only if they are indicated. And the indications are associated mental retardation, dysmorphism, focal neurological signs, and things like that. But what they do need is an early detection and early intervention. Now, a few words about early intervention before I stop. What do we mean by early intervention? Early intervention programs are programs where which help a child to develop skills which they were not otherwise developing. How? By stimulating the brain, by repeatedly making them do various things which will stimulate that part of the brain which was otherwise dormant. So, it is said that early intervention helps young children to acquire the skills that they need by building upon the natural learning process, building upon the abilities already in the child, and gradually develop the um, brain structure by giving adequate stimulation. The science behind it is neuroplasticity, and this is stimulation through activity, as I've just mentioned. Now, who are the children who need EI? All children up to 5 years of age with any developmental delay require early intervention. And newborns at risk should be provided early intervention to help their brain to grow normally. Who provides this? A specialized team of therapists are required to provide a holistic early intervention, which should include physiotherapist, occupational therapist, special educator, developmental psychologist, a developmental pediatrician, and what I left out was a speech language therapist. So, again, I repeat physiotherapist, occupational therapist, speech language therapist, special educator, developmental psychologist, all under the guidance of a developmental pediatrician. I will give you a glimpse of different early intervention techniques that are being done at my institute. So you see here at the top left corner, what is this lady doing? Helping the child do beading to improve his fine motor skills. Here, the child is working with small round objects, and you see circles on the paper. So this is a activity of fine motor and cognitive, where eye-hand coordination is improved. Similarly here, the child is drawing and coloring and also relating to a picture. So it's communication skill as well as cognitive. Here you see a child on a board. This is a vestibular board. This is um, session of physiotherapy and occupational therapy going on with a lot of sensory stimulation for the child. And here it's simply playing with the child. So altogether, this comprises early intervention. Thank you.